The room went quiet as Dianna, my stepmother of 8 years, finished her presentation. Everyone looked at me, waiting to see how I would react to her harsh criticism of my abilities. "Thank you for your concerns," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But as my father's chosen successor and the majority shareholder, I believe my record speaks for itself." Dianna smiled condescendingly. "Running a small marketing division is hardly enough preparation for leading James Global. The board deserves a CEO with real experience. My name is Olivia James, and 2 months ago, my father's sudden death threw me into a battle I never wanted. Michael James had built James Global from scratch into a $4 billion technology empire. I was his only child, but Dianna seemed determined to forget that. Your marketing division," she continued, "represents less than 2% of company revenue. My divisions have shown 15% growth year over year." She did mention how those divisions had grown. I found out the truth just 3 days ago, hidden in my father's encrypted files. But I kept my face neutral, remembering his final words. "Timing matters. Live." As Dianna pushed for the CEO role, I understood what he meant. She was too confident, thinking she had everything under control. The board, the numbers, and a plan to push me aside. "Olivia lacks the international experience we need," Dianna said. "She's never even lived abroad, while I've spent 5 years managing our European operations." I noticed Thomas, my father's oldest friend and a board member, watching me closely. He'd been trying to warn me about Dianna for weeks. I gave him a slight nod, telling him I was fine. Dianna moved to call a vote. "We need to act quickly. The markets are watching," she said. "This is highly irregular," Thomas protested. Michael's will was clear about succession. Diana's smile didn't change. "Wills can be challenged if there's evidence of diminished capacity. Michael was ill for months, and his judgment may have been compromised." The accusation that my father was too sick to know what he was doing when he named me his successor hung in the air. "I have documentation," Dianna continued, "from his doctors and key employees, showing concerning decisions he made. It was all made up, but the board didn't know that. They had seen my father's decline, and Dianna had made sure to control who could visit him and what medications he received." I opened my laptop, pretending to check notes, but I was watching a live feed from Diana's office. Right on schedule, Marcus Foster, her right-hand man, was letting himself in with the key she'd given him. In 17 minutes, he would find what I had left for him to find. "Perhaps we should review all the documentation, including my father's personal records," I said carefully. Diana's eyes narrowed. "I don't see the need for delay." "Are you sure?" I asked, watching the live feed as Marcus started his search. "Is there anything else the board should know before making such an important decision?" Dianna paused, sensing the challenge in my tone. Her composure cracked for a moment, and then her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. I knew what it said. "We have a problem." "Maybe we should discuss the real numbers behind those growing divisions," I said. "The ones that don't appear in official reports." Diana's face drained of color. "I don't know what you're implying." "No implications," I said calmly. "Just facts. Would anyone like to see them?" I pulled out a thick folder from my briefcase, filled with copies of everything I found in my father's hidden files. It showed how Dianna had been inflating profits, hiding losses, and stealing from the company. "This meeting is adjourned," Dianna said abruptly, standing up. "We'll reconvene when everyone has had time to sit down." "We're not finished," I said quietly, my voice carrying authority like my father's. The board members were stunned as I laid out the documents. 3 years ago, someone began manipulating the books in our European operations. I explained, showing how Dianna had been stealing from the company while hiding losses through fake reports. "This is absurd," Dianna snapped, but her voice wavered. "These documents are clearly fabricated." "Are they?" I asked. "Like the medical records you fabricated about my father's mental state?" I clicked to the next slide. Surveillance footage from my father's hospital room. Dianna went white as she watched herself arguing with my father's doctor. She was telling him to make it look like my father's mental decline was happening faster than it was. "I need you to adjust his medication," she said. "It would be profitable." I paused the video. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. "My father knew," I said softly. "He found out months ago, but instead of confronting you, he started gathering evidence to understand how deep the corruption went and who else was involved." Thomas leaned forward. That's why he pushed for security upgrades, the new cameras, and the enhanced monitoring systems. I nodded. Every office, every meeting, every conversation recorded and backed up to servers only he could access. He gave me access to them 3 days before he died. Diana's lawyer tried to speak, but I cut him off. These recordings may not be allowed in court, but we're not in court. We're in a boardroom, and the board deserves to know the truth about who they're considering for CEO. I showed more evidence, financial records revealing the true state of our European operations. The divisions Diana claimed were growing at 15% were actually losing money. She had hidden those losses using fraudulent accounting. Would you like to explain that, Diana? She stood up, gathering her papers. I don't have to listen to these accusations, my lawyers will. Sit down, I said, my voice firmer. You wanted a vote on leadership. Let's have one. But first, let's make sure the board has all the facts. I showed more evidence, emails between Diana and her conspirators, bank statements showing stolen funds, and footage of her meeting with competitors, selling them our trade secrets. The room went quiet as Diana finished her presentation, her assessment of my capabilities harsh and critical. I took a deep breath and responded calmly, "Thank you for your concerns. But as my father's chosen successor and majority shareholder, I believe my record speaks for itself." Diana, with her perfect smile, countered, "Running a small marketing division is hardly preparation for leading a company like James Global." I knew Diana was trying to push me aside, but I had my father's secret files and I wasn't going down without a fight. Diana continued, highlighting my lack of international experience while ignoring the real issues. I let her go on, but I knew something she didn't. Diana had been hiding massive fraud. I had discovered the truth just days before. Diana had been manipulating the company's financials, inflating profits, and hiding losses through shell companies. As she went on about her supposed expertise, I calmly hinted there was more to know. When I presented the evidence, including surveillance footage and financial documents, Diana's composure cracked. The board saw the truth. Diana had been stealing from the company and forging my father's medical records to make him look incapable. The board was shocked, but Thomas Chen, a trusted board member, spoke up. "Given these revelations, Mrs. James, I think it's best if you resigned immediately." Diana's lawyer tried to intervene, but Diana was too proud to back down. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. I stayed calm, knowing exactly what I was doing, protecting my father's legacy and stopping her from destroying everything. Just then, the doors opened and FBI agents entered, arresting Diana for fraud and embezzlement. The board watched in stunned silence as they led her away. Afterward, the board voted unanimously in my favor to become CEO. The following weeks were a blur of reorganizing and fixing the mess Diana had made. While the press focused on the drama, I worked tirelessly with forensic accountants to uncover the full extent of her fraud. It was worse than we thought, nearly $500 million stolen. One evening, Thomas visited me in my new office. He told me that my father had known what Diana was doing long before he passed away. My father had prepared everything, installing cameras and giving me access to his private servers so I could expose her once she made her move. The next day, I visited Diana in prison. She sneered at me, asking if I had come to gloat. I calmly asked her why she risked everything for money and power when she already had everything she needed. She angrily told me that she had nothing, as everything belonged to my father, and she could never live up to his precious daughter. She claimed she deserved the success. But the truth was, she stole what she couldn't inherit. Diana told me she would always be second best to me. I could see past her anger to the insecurity she tried to hide. I told her, "You're wrong. My father would have taken care of you, but you got greedy, and now you're losing everything." Her face turned cold. "You think you've won? You have no idea what it takes to run this company. You'll fail, and everyone will see I was right about you." I stood tall, fixing my jacket, and said, "Goodbye, Diana. Enjoy the next 20 to 30 years." Back at the office, I called a company-wide meeting to address the future. Standing at the podium, facing hundreds of uncertain employees, I thought about my father's legacy. "The past few months have been hard," I began. "We've learned painful truths, but James Global was built on values like integrity and resilience. Those values didn't die with my father, and they won't be tainted by greed." I shared my vision for the company's future, more transparency, stronger oversight, and a focus on ethical business practices. The response was overwhelming. People were ready for change. Over the next year, we turned things around. Diana's European divisions, which had been drained by her, became profitable. We rebuilt trust and reestablished important relationships. One evening, almost exactly a year after Diana's arrest, I sat in my office, looking out at the city. I remembered something my father used to say: success isn't just about making money. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror every morning. I got a text from Thomas. Your father would be proud. Dinner next week to celebrate the quarterly numbers. I smiled and replied. Diana had thought she could use my father's death to take over. But she didn't understand what made James Global strong. It wasn't just about money or power, it was about doing things the right way. The company had weathered the storm and emerged stronger than ever. Diana's conviction made headlines. Her co-conspirators were turning on each other, revealing more of her schemes. But for me, the true victory wasn't her downfall. It was proving that my father had been right to trust me with his legacy. The board, who had been skeptical at first, now supported me strongly. A year after becoming CEO, I stood in my father's office, looking at his picture on the wall. You didn't you? I whispered to his smiling face. You knew she would try something like this. That's why you left me the clues. I could almost hear his voice in my head. You did good, kid. You did good. I sat down at my desk, opening my laptop to review the latest expansion proposals. The company was growing, this time on a solid foundation of real success, not fraudulent numbers. Diana's betrayal had almost ruined everything my father built, but in the end, it had only made us stronger. As I worked into the evening, I realized how far we'd come. Diana had underestimated me just as she had underestimated my father's foresight. She thought she could steal his legacy, but instead, she had helped strengthen it through me. The city lights twinkled below as I packed up to head home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to prove that James Global was more than just a company. It was a legacy of integrity passed from father to daughter. And somewhere in a federal prison, Diana had plenty of time to think about how her plan had failed. The empire she tried to steal was thriving without her, led by the very person she tried to destroy. Sometimes justice works out exactly as it should.